We're in the middle of a series called Overflow, and this has been the theme of our church the entire year. Every February, we kick off like a new theme for the year, and so I wanted to end January, which kind of goes into a new year, with a series called Overflow, and it stems around this idea that what is in your heart will overflow in your life. So whatever's in your life, whatever's in your heart, that's going to naturally come out in your life. And so we've been taking 21 days, we're kind of praying and fasting, and we've kind of choosing different things to fast from. And some of you are fasting from TikTok, and God made sure you would fast from TikTok. He said, no more for you, right? He said, you're done. So if you're fasting from TikTok, you need to choose something else because it's been taken away, right? It's been taken away from you. But we've been fasting, and we're doing that because we're about to celebrate 10 years as a church together. And honestly, it's just truly overwhelming sometimes to just think about everything that has happened over the last 10 years. And so on February 9th, Pastor Colin talked about it. We're getting together in one service at Gadsden City High School, their auditorium. And I just think it would be amazing for all of us to be together as a church family and just celebrate what God has done. And as we also look to what's next. But I love this idea of overflow because as a church, I pray that the overflow of who we are as a church spills out into the community around us, right? Because if what we do just stays here, then we're doing something wrong. But as we kind of talk about this idea today, I just turned this month, I turned 41, so I'm like fully in the 40s. And I just feel like this is going to be the best decade of my life, all right? I've just kind of made it seem like that. But I also realized I'm not who I once was, all right? A little different. There's things hit different now in your 40s than they did when you're in your 20s or your 30s. But I grew up in Arizona for my middle school and high school years. My dad was in the Army, so we moved a lot. But in middle school and high school, I grew up in Arizona. And one of the things that's different about Arizona than it is like in the South is there are sports, like we have the same sports, obviously, but there are different sports that you can play in high school than you can here. And in Arizona, in high school, they offer guys volleyball. And my sophomore year, I had a bunch of friends play, and I was like, I'm gonna play with them too. And so I was on the guys volleyball team. Now, let me tell you something. I actually got to be pretty good. I was the starting setter, and man, I had a great time. It was so much fun. I fell in love with volleyball, pretty good at it, took it with me throughout college. And then when I became a youth pastor, I took those volleyball skills to take it out on teenagers. You know what I mean? Just spiking the ball in their faces makes you feel good about yourself. You'll never be anything, bam, stuff like that. So as I got older, obviously, there's not a lot of opportunities to play volleyball. It wasn't like I was looking for volleyball rec leagues to be a part of, just whatever. But this past year, our students went to youth camp down in Florida, and Pastor Colin asked me and my wife, and went and we kind of cooked for them all weekend, and they were playing beach volleyball, having so much fun, and they were asking me, like, Pastor Dan, you should play. And, I was like, man, I was just 40, I was like, you know what? I was channeling my inner Toby Keith. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. I was like, of course I'm going to play, right? And so I go out there, and I'm like, all right, we're going to play, and I'm going to show these teenagers like a little something, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to show them, like, dang, Pastor Dan's better than what we thought. We didn't know what type of things he was capable of until this moment. Plus, I have a son. He's a freshman, just was going to be a freshman. So, like, man, this is a great opportunity to show him up, you know what I mean? So I have a pretty mean jump serve. I could just jump like just bam, like I just got it on pool. All right, I'm just letting you know, it's pretty good until I tried it. And let me tell you something, I went for a jump serve and I completely whiffed, all right? And the teenagers are laughing at me. They're all gonna laugh at you. That's like happening to me, and I'm laughing. I'm like, it's all good. Like my pride took a little hit, but it's okay. This is only a 6-foot net, and I know that I'm gonna rotate to the front, and guess what's gonna happen? I'm gonna spike the ball in some kid's face and not feel bad about it, right? And so it's fine. So we get around, and I get to the front, and I'm like, sure enough, here I am, right down front. This is amazing, and what's even better is my son's in front of me, and I'm like, kill this dude, you know what I mean? But let me tell you something. When you turn 40, I'm not saying I'm not saying I could ever dunk. I could never dunk, but I had decent hops for an Asian guy, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I'm about to get this right now. And sure enough, Pastor Colin sets it up for an amazing opportunity just to crush this ball. And let me tell you something, I had an ugly vertical, all right? It was honestly, I was embarrassed of myself. I don't even know if I got off the ground, I thought I jumped. I don't even know if I jumped. And all I remember is trying to spike, and my little freshman son blocks the ball right there in front of my face. It was honestly horrible. I had to talk about it, went to counseling for it for a few weeks, it was pretty sad. And I just realized that who I am is no longer what I really am. My mind was like, dude, you got this. And your body was like, no, you don't. I remember this last year, the Barbarian Challenge. I love doing obstacle course races, and I try to just keep in shape and stuff and do these things. And I do pretty well, never top 3, competitive, but I do well, we can do it well. And so my son and his friend want to do the race, and I was telling him, this will be the hardest race you've ever done. I don't think you even know what you're about to enter into. This is about to be ridiculous. It takes a lot of people, and it's okay if you guys can't do it, because I'm gonna be there for you, all right? And so what we'll do is if I get ahead, I'll wait on you guys, but we'll stick together. We'll stick together, all right? Because, we're out there on the trail, 10K is a lot of things they've never done before. And let me tell you, so we get out there and we start running, and they left me. They left me. And not only did they leave me, they did all the obstacles, and I finished about 45 minutes after them, right? It was, honestly, it was depressing. It was so sad, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting punked out by these little kids, you know what I mean? And here I am. I think that I'm something, and I've quickly realized that I am no longer that. And I think about it millennials will remember this, you'll relate to this. It was back in the day when Michael Jordan came back and played for the Wizards, it was dude, please, why did you ruin this version of yourself for me? I have to share you this one. It was 2015 when the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl, because I'm feeling salty about last week. And Peyton Manning was honestly a shell of who he was. He was horrible. And he got through and we won because of other things. And so I want to kind of hit you with this thought this morning that there is a difference in who you think you are versus who you actually are. Every single person in this room, if you're watching online, there is a difference in who you think you are and who you actually are. And there are some of us in this room that like to think of ourselves higher than we really are. There are some of us in this room that are honestly just quite arrogant, if we're just being honest. We think we are the junk. And we don't want people to see the ugly side of who we actually are. We want people to see the best version of ourselves. I will never forget how Instagram introduced the world to filters. Maybe it was Snapchat first, but obviously I don't use. But so it was filters. And now what we could do is actually hide the way that we actually look with a filter. And so not only do we filter ourselves physically, but we also filter our lives metaphorically. And we want people to think we are holier than we actually are. We want people to think we have more money than we actually do. We want people to think that we're smarter than we actually are. We give them this filter version of ourselves. There's the real us, and there's the blemished version of us. We don't want people to know that we've lost a step. We don't want people to know that we're not as good as we think we are. We don't want people to know that we're not capable. We don't want people to know that we've fallen back a little bit. So we gotta give them the lie, and we fall for the trap over and over and over again. Jesus gives a parable in Matthew 25, and it's pretty powerful because he talks about who you think you are versus who you actually are. But I want to, first off, just kind of take a little note and say Matthew 25 is a continuation of Matthew chapter 24. And Jesus in Matthew 24 starts to give some parables, and he's specifically giving parables about the end times, okay? He's really talking about true followers of Christ versus people who will actually eternally be forever separated from God if you don't have a relationship with Jesus. And Matthew 25 continues that same thought with this parable. So the greater context of the parable I'm sharing today is that it's about genuine followers of Jesus versus people who actually aren't followers of Jesus. But we're not gonna look at that part today. I want us to focus more in on an application focus I want us to see how what's being said in this parable actually applies to us in our daily approach to life. So it'll be in Matthew 25, verse 14, to be on the screens for you. It starts off like this, Jesus saying, and again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. And he called together his servants, and he entrusted his money to them while he was gone. Could you imagine? Like you're like a business owner, and you're like, hey, employees, come here. All the money that I own, I'm going to let you guys take care of it, right? Parents, you're going on a trip. Hey, you call your kids together in a room. Listen, guys, we're about to be gone. Me and your mom going on a trip. We're going to give you all of our money, and we're going to trust that you take care of this money, right? Kind of a crazy story. Again, it's a parable. It's made up. So verse 15, he says, he gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on the trip. Now think about that for a second. He's calling his servants together. He says, hey guys, I'm going to go on a long trip. I'm going to trust you with my money. And I'm going to give it to you guys based off of what I think your abilities actually are. First guy steps up. He gets 5 bags of silver. Can you imagine the other 2 guys going like, dude got 5 bags? I'm about to get 10 bags of silver, right? And he's like, all right, hey, you come forward. He's like, 2 bags. You're like, whoa, 2 bags? That guy calls into work all the time, right? Like, I'm the one that just made him look good last week, right? Like, how did he get 5 and I got 2? That's messed up. And then he calls the last guy. The last guy, it's like that person you work with, and you already know about this person. You're like, this guy's probably getting nothing. And he gets 1 bag of silver. Boom, you get 1. Can you imagine that person for a second? Like, 1? Like, that's it? Like, gosh. He's like, it's not even that much money. Why did that guy get 2 and I got 1? So you can imagine there's a lot of kind of maybe inner tension, conflict potentially happening amongst these 3 people who have been told by someone else what their abilities are. And you know what that tells me? Is that at the end of it all, one day, someone's going to tell you what your abilities actually are. Like, we like to judge ourselves and say what we think we are, but every single person in this room is going to be told what you are. You want to think you're something, but someone else will say, no, you're actually this, and so you get 2 bags. No, you thought you were 5. No, you're the 1 bagger. You think your ability is something greater than it actually is, but really at the end of it all, someone else is going to be telling you what you actually are. And he continues on in verse 16. The servant who received 5 bags of silver, he began to invest the money and earn 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. Now, can you imagine the conversation for a second? One guy with the 5 bags is like, man, what I got to do? He's like, you know what? There's about to be a new president. Interest rates about to go up. He's like, I'm investing this junk. He's like, I'm about to make some money. He's like, hey, have you guys heard of Bitcoin? Have you guys heard of that? He's like, I don't know. Like, this is something crazy. And so he goes in there and he doubles his money, 10 bags of silver. The second guy is a little more like blue collar. He's like, all right, man, I gotta find some money. This guy's making money. He's investing it. He's like, I know what I'll do. I'll go out there. I'm gonna hustle hard. I'm gonna take on a side job. Boom. And it says he goes to work and he makes 2 more bags of silver. They're asking the last guy, well, what'd you do? He's like, well, you know me. He's like, so what I did is I put the bag of silver in a treasure box and I buried it because when I dig it up, that's gonna feel cool. Everyone's looking at like, dude, you're an idiot, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what? He's like, yeah, it's in a treasure box. So I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna dig, like Jack Sparrow, I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna feel good about that. I said, all right, you do you, right? You do you. Here in verse 19, after a long time, it said the master returned from his trip and he called them to give an account for how they had used his money. The servant to whom he entrusted 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities to celebrate together. The servant who had received 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." So you can imagine here for a second, the first guy shows up, they're all showing back up, right? You got the three guys there. One guy's like holding 10 bags of silver, other guy's got 4, the dude's got a treasure box with 1 bag in it. Come on, guys, you remember I just shared come on, go with me here, go with me. So they got this, right? The first guy goes up and goes, "Hey, I had 5, I got you 5 more. He's like, "You are faithful servant. You handled this small amount, and I'm gonna give you more opportunities. We are gonna celebrate together." Bang. He's feeling good about himself. The second guy goes, he's like, "Master, you gave me 2, and I made 2 more. And what does he say? The exact same thing. "You have been faithful in handling a small amount. I'm gonna give you more opportunities. Let's celebrate together." Now, how do you think the dude with 5 bags just felt? It's like, well, yeah, but I got 10. He only got 4. 10 is more than 4. Why is he getting celebrated the same way? We're going to talk about that in a second, but why is it the same thing? But the master says the exact same thing. You've been faithful with a little, and now I'm going to give you more. Some of us in the room wonder why God hasn't given us more. It's because we haven't been faithful with the little he's given us. And so here he says, I'm going to give you more, and we're going to celebrate together. And then there's old dude. One guy left. He's got to feel pretty dumb right now, right? He's got a little treasure box. He's like, "Well, I felt good digging it up." And this is what he says. "Then the servant with 1 bag of silver came and said, 'Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant, gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. And look, here is your money back.' The master replied, 'You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it.' Then he ordered, 'Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will be given in abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant out into darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" Now, obviously, again, there's a greater context to this wicked servant, and obviously, he's a person who wasn't a true follower of Christ. But in this illustration, for what we're talking about this morning, is that this guy is cast out for his laziness. The 1 bag is not given to the guy with 4, it's given to the guy with 10. Can you just think about that conversation for a second? Like, whoa, why is he getting that? Like, you said I'd be getting more. I have 4, you said I'd be getting more. Why are you giving it to him? So who are you really? I think some of us, if we're honest, we think we're the 5-bagger. We think we're that person. The reality is you might be one. Well, you might be one. But chances are you're probably the person with 2 bags. You're probably the 2-bagger. Most of us in this room, you're watching online, most of us are the 2-bagger. Here's why. Think about it for a second. We all know the 5-baggers in life. They're the people that always had money. They went to the best schools. They had nice cars. They're smart. They're attractive. Everyone wants to be their friend. They have a perfect family, incredible job. Everyone loves them. They're walking around always #blessed. Everything in their life constantly goes right. They have the Midas touch. Everything they touch turns to gold. We hate them. No, honest, right? Like, dude, we really can't stand people like that. Everything they do, it's like everything they do is always amazing. It's always good. It's always great. How is everything they do always amazing all the time? And so there are always those people in life who will always be better than you, smarter than you, better looking than you, have more money than you, whatever, more than you. So it makes them 5-baggers and it makes you 2. But if you think about it like this, there's always going to be someone who has it worse than you. And if you think, well, no one has it worse than me, then you need to go on a missions trip outside of America, and you'll quickly find out that the majority of the world has it worse than you. But think about the person with 1 bag. This person is the opposite of the 5-bagger. They probably always had it tough. Rough home life, maybe they had single parent, maybe they didn't even have a parent, they probably didn't even finish school, they can't ever hold a decent job, they're probably unattractive, life has beat them up. Those are the people we feel sorry for, We're like, oh, poor person, look at them. Life is always treating them so poorly. It just seems so unfair. So in your life, there's always going to be people who have better than you, and there's always going to be people who have worse than you. And it can really seem unfair because the master is really deciding who is what according to their ability. And I think that's really tough for us to realize that one day when we stand before God, he doesn't care about anybody else except for you in that moment. And he's not comparing you to anybody else outside of what you have done with your life. So what do you think like those people felt when the master's giving out the different money? He's like, man, I really thought I was this. The reality shows I'm something different. But let's flip it. Let's think about from the servant's perspective for a second. How do you think they felt? First guy gets 5. He's like, man, that's pretty awesome. And he sees the next guy gets 2, the next guy gets 1. What do you think he's feeling? He's like, I always knew I was the best. I mean, look at these guys. These guys are punks. Like, look at me. Like, I have 5 bags of silver. Like, the master knows I'm bringing the A game. I'm the star player. I'm the reason why the company's doing so good. I'm the reason why this, and that. And so this person, 5 baggers, they typically just struggle with pride. And as you go down the line, what do you think the person with 1 bag feels like? Of course I only get 1. Why wouldn't I get 1? Everything else in my life is going so great. Constantly have this, constantly have that, constantly complain, whatever. And so the person with 1 bag feels like the victim. And so now in life, you have people who constantly struggle with pride or people who constantly feel like the victim. And you know what it is? Both of those mentalities have a look at me. Pride says, look at me. Look at what I've done. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at how great I am. Look at how people want me on their team. Look at how companies fight for me and how I get raises and promotions or this or that. And we constantly talk about ourselves, and yet you fail to realize the only reason why you're every bit as amazing as you are is because God gave you the ability to do what you're doing. And you lost track of the fact that you did nothing to earn that. God gave you everything so you could be who you are today. But pride keeps us from focusing on that, and we focus on ourselves and we look at how great that we are, and then you go all the way down to the victim. My life is constantly horrible. Look at how unfair life is to me. Of course it would turn out this way. And you look for blaming others, and so we kind of say it like this: everyone gets an opportunity and you'll be held accountable for what you do with it. Everyone in this room gets an opportunity at life. You get 1 shot. I'm really fighting hard not to lose yourself in the music in the moment. We get 1 opportunity at life. You just get 1 opportunity. You get 1 life. That is it. What are you going to do with the 1 life that you have? And I think that's like the reality that is kind of like sometimes can be gruesome and grim. Like when you're younger, you don't really think about your life because you think you have so much life. Yet, like scripture says, you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. You're like a mist. You're here and you're gone. Life is vanished. And how many people do we know that their life ended so much shorter than it should have? We don't think about future. We just think about in the moment. And then a lot of us are kind of on the other side going like, man, what have I done with my life? What am I going to do with the rest of it? And so you get this 1 opportunity to go and live your life. And yet too often, so many of us, we're constantly complaining about the 1 life that we have. And you fail to realize that God is going to hold you accountable for how you lived your life. That person that went out and invested it and doubled. You got the person who went out there and doubled. And then you have the last guy who literally does nothing. They each had this opportunity, and they were all held accountable, not to the other person, but to themselves. Each person was held accountable for what they did with what they were given. And some of you in this room today, you've been given an opportunity, and you might feel like the 1 bag. But guess what? You're going to be held accountable for what you did with that 1. Some of you have been given everything, and yet you live like the person with 1. Some of you have been given 2, and you spend your whole time focusing on who you're not like and who you're better than, and you never focus on the life that God has given you. We're going to be held accountable. Think about verse 19 again. Let's look at that. It says, after a long time, the master returned from his trip, and he called them to give an account for how they had used his money. one day we will give an account for how we lived our life. It's not going to be our spouse. It's not going to be our kids. It's not going to be our parents. It's going to be us. And we're going to stand before God, and he's not going to go, well, yeah, but, compared to so-and-so, you're pretty good. No, he's going to go, what did you do with the one thing that I've given you? How did you live your life? Now, think about that for a second. The first two guys are celebrated, even though they did different things, even though they accumulated different amounts, even though they weren't equal. God held them accountable separately, and they were both equally celebrated. Now, the one person, if you're standing there looking like a goofball with a treasure box going like, man, digging it up felt fun, but this does not feel fun. What are you going to do in that moment? It's getting to you. You're looking like, man, these guys all double their money. Both of them double their money. It's coming to you. What are you going to do? Hey, so master, I just want to apologize. I want to ask you to forgive me. I didn't take the job seriously, and honestly, I put it in a treasure box and buried it. It was really fun digging it up. That was really stupid now. I can see that, and I am sorry. Will you please forgive me? He could have asked for forgiveness. He could have taken responsibility. We're constantly trying to teach our kids, take responsibility. Maybe just like, master, hey, I just want to own up right now. So I have one bag of silver. I know it's all you've given me. I did nothing with it, and I apologize. I got really good at solitaire while you were gone, and I now see that I should have done some work probably, and so I apologize, and whatever you have to do, I take full responsibility for my actions. It's my fault, right? Like, those are like two things that he could have asked for forgiveness. He could have just owned up and taken responsibility. Let's see what this guy does, because honestly, it just boggles my mind as we look at verse 24 again. It says, then the servant with one bag of silver came to the master and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant, gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back. He literally has the audacity to go, hey, actually, this is your fault. Hey, I know you're a jerk. You're honestly a horrible boss to work for. Can't believe that you're here. I see your business practices. You take things that don't belong to you. You're honestly kind of a shady dude. So honestly, bro, I did nothing with your money. You can take it back. It's your fault anyways that you even put it in my hands in the first place. Could you imagine the audacity for you to just do that? Somebody like, man, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Can you imagine what that dude was like? He literally blames the master for his inability, for his ineffectiveness, for him doing nothing. He blames the master. It was his fault that he did nothing with his money. And you know what? How many of us do the same thing? We blame the circumstances that happen around us. We blame our spouses. We blame other people. We blame our boss. We blame the cards we've been dealt. No matter what, we look around and we have an out. It's not my fault because of this, and you can play the victim. And there are some of you in the room that you've gotten really good at that. You've gotten really good at blaming other things. You've got really good at blaming other people. You've got really good at blaming your circumstances in life. And I get it. Some of you have been dealt a bad hand. Some of you have been like if we were to hear your story, we would go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Hey, I'm sorry that happened to you as a kid. I'm sorry that person did that to you. I can't believe that your ex would do that. I can't believe this happened to you. I can't believe you lost that. And you had a pretty just honestly like crappy set of cards dealt with you. And I get it. But at the end of the day, you're still responsible for what you do with your life. Don't we love those stories of people who've been just dealt a bad hand and they just make the most of it, just doing whatever they can to make their life better? We love those things in life. And then there are some of you here, you've been given everything and you're doing nothing. I mean, God has blessed you over and over and over again. He constantly just pours it out on you and you take it for granted. And you just don't do anything with your life. And there are others of you here, and you're two bags, and you're too focused on everybody else. You're too focused on trying to catch up or trying to stay ahead that you lose track of the fact that you are responsible for what you have to do with your life. We're all gonna stand before God, and the overflow of your life is gonna speak. So really the challenge this morning is, who are you really? Your life already shows it. Your life already shows who you are. So are you the person that struggles with pride? Are you the person that constantly is the victim? Or where at you in the pendulum? It's time to use your life fully. Lord, you have my life and I give it to you, whatever it looks like. I trust, God, that you will use it. Who are you really? Because the overflow of your life is already showing. Let's pray together.